song playing. I'll play the Pretender for a minute, so you can get.
Yeah, it's working. It's working. It worked instantly, pretty much. I just need to double click it. Oh, we've got it recording now.
All right, we're gonna be going live in a second.
So what are we calling this one? Like what? Emergency broadcast? Maggot show. So
Well, you're just starting a little bit earlier. You know what, Maggot?
Yeah. We just do it as a Maggot show. Fine.
Yeah, I want to give you 2 hours, man. I would love to give you 2 hours. I know it's a little hard on you, but you can find yourself a nice co-host.
Yeah.
But I really think that you're a 2 hour kind of show, because you just basically get started in that second hour is when when you start getting really good. So I noticed that yesterday, and I was like, oh shit, he needs to be a 2 hour show, really.
Yeah. Well, I did 2 hours yesterday.
Yeah, you did, and you really do need to be a 2 hour show. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. I know Becker would back me up on that. Becker mentioned it a couple days ago. You need to have 2 hours.
I know. He says Maggot's a snob. It's like, where? Well, I'm a snob because I drink out of a cup that's got 2 pigs on it. I mean, do I have to explain everything to you? I'm speaking to pigs. Pigs, I know. Maybe you got that joke. It's also the local club. Listening to the Maggot show. This is the Maggot. Yes, I am Maggot. I'm talking now. It's a slightly earlier show than usual. We should have a few people on the line. Might start speaking in a moment. I'll just do it as normal. We've got a few extra things happening sort of in the background, so as soon as people want to start mentioning them, then feel free to jump in. Definitely send me a text message quick in the chat room first, though. Or just start shouting. Damn it, I did have a good one. Okay. Oh. Okay. No particular order. First headline I'm reading today is Mr. Gay UK police officer denies rape charges. Oh yeah. A police officer and former Mr. Gay UK today denied a number of sex offences, including raping another man. PC Mark Carter, 27, was charged after an incident at a hotel in Leeds city centre on December 19th last year. He appeared at Leeds Crown Court today and pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of rape and 3 sexual assaults. In a brief hearing, the court was told the charges involved 4 different alleged victims and are said to have taken place between December 18th and 19th last year. Carter stood in front of the dock wearing a navy blue suit, white shirt and striped tie. He spoke only to confirm his personal details and to enter his plea. The officer, who has been suspended by West Yorkshire Police, was given conditional bail and told to appear again at Leeds Crown Court on December 13th for trial. Carter is also charged with possessing the Class C bodybuilding drug stanozol, also on December 19th. In relation to the alleged drugs offence, he was given unconditional bail to appear at the court again on December 13th when his trial begins. PC Carter was crowned Mr. K UK in 2006 at the Flamingo Club in Blackpool. He was said to have the full backing of West Yorkshire Police. It gets really bad when you start thinking of that double meanings of that. The whole West Yorkshire Police have been up his back. He beat 25 other contestants. to win £5,000 of prizes. Oh dear. Yeah, it never runs as fast when the show's on. I have to get used to that. This computer just No, it's all sort of like funny things about gays. There's loads of headlines of funny things about gays. I'm trying to find some serious-ish storylines. I've got schooling gay kookaburra song rail, and that's one of the top stories. Okay. Oh no. Oh, I had a Iran barred UN inspectors give false info, but it's a false link. Okay, I've got China to build $2 billion railway for Iran in the Telegraph. China is poised to sign a 2 billion, 1.3 billion deal. That's a 1.3 billion pound deal to build a railway line in Iran in the first step of a wider plan to tie the Middle East and Central Asia to Beijing. It'd have to be like nuclear bomb proofing, I suppose. China's Railways Minister Liu Zhijun is expected to visit Tehran this week to seal the deal, according to his Iranian counterpart Hamid Bahani. The final document of the contract has already been signed with the Chinese company, and the Chinese minister will visit Iran on September the 12th to ink the agreement, says Mr. Behbahani. The new line will run from Tehran to the town of Khosravi on the border with Iraq, around 360 miles as the crow flies, passing through Iraq, Hamadan, and Kermanshah. Eventually, the Iranian government said the route could link Iran with Iraq and even Syria as part of a Middle Eastern corridor. That could also benefit the 5,000 Iranians who make pilgrimages each day to the holy cities of Najaf and Karbala in Iraq. Nicholas Swanstrom, the executive director of the Central Asia Caucasus Institute at Johns Hopkins University, said the contract to build the line was the first step for China to build an entire rail infrastructure for Central Asia. It makes sense that if you build railways in Iran, you then get deals to stretch the lines into Central Asia, he said, referring to a very concrete plan to run a railway from Iran through the landlocked countries of... where's it gone? Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and eventually to Kashgar in China in a modern Silk Route. Ooh, the Silk Route, yes. There's a big one in China. The Silk Road. Apparently that was the path that they followed in Journey to the West. But it was like, well, all the money was along that Silk Road. I'm not sure where it went from. I think it went through India and China. Basically, sort of like the whole, sort of like the continent you'd recognise as Russia as being part of, yeah, it was a major trading route, and they had problems with bandits and all this sort of exciting stuff as well. But it was sort of like the main line of the whole empire was like silk was like sold for a lot of money, and so that was part of the reason it was called the Silk Road. But it's also called the Golden Road, possibly inspiration Wizard of Oz, I suppose. The yellow brick road being the golden path or whatever. I don't know. That line would give the Central Asian states vital access to Iran's port of Chabahar on the shores of the Persian Gulf, and could also eventually give China a vital overland freight route to Europe. For China, it could cut the cost of transporting goods to Europe by 5% or 6%, said Professor Swanstrom. It also makes political sense, because while technically the US, Europe or Russia could block China's sea routes, it would also have a land route. And by tying your neighbour's infrastructure to you, it brings them closer, he added. It decreases Russia's influence in the region, and definitely decreases the influence of the US and Europe. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the Iranian president, raised the idea of the new railway earlier this year at a summit in Tehran. Transport ministers from Tajikistan, Afghanistan and Iran are expected to gather in Dushanbe, the Tajik capital formerly known as Stalinabad, next month to firm up a deal for a 1,225-mile route. I won't say how much it is in kilometres, but it's a really long route. The Asian Development Bank is funding a feasibility study for the project. Iran is determined to forge tighter links with its neighbours and rebuild itself as a trade hub in order to build a regional alliance that would support it against NATO countries. Okay, there's declaring war against NATO in a way then. Or just protection. No, we need to do protection against NATO. At the beginning of last month, Mr. Ahmadinejad said Tajikistan, Afghanistan and Iran should join forces to become an obstacle to Western influence in the region. Iran has pointedly not signed up to European Union plans for a trade corridor through Europe, the Caucasus and Asia, and has instead busied itself with bilateral agreements with its neighbours. Reza Rahimi, the Iranian vice president, has promised to cut freight times between Europe and China from 2 months by sea to 11 days by land. In addition, the current sanctions on Iran allow China, which relies on the Persian state for 15% of its energy needs, to drive a hard bargain on the construction contract for the line. China is rapidly expanding its own high-speed rail network, as unveiled plans for lines that will connect Beijing with London, both through Russia and through Central Asia. China Railway Group, the largest railway construction company, has also recently revealed that it has had early-stage contact with South African companies about undertaking rail projects in South Africa. That's the end of that one. This is kind of interesting. This way, it's like things is like totally different. They seem to be all like upturning everything, where everybody else is like collapsing. So it's just a rise and fall sort of process. There's too much of it going on to people like the Jones or whatever to dismiss it. Oh no, everything's collapsing, folks. Everything. Oh, dying. I can't breathe. It's the way they make up stories like that about them having a railway line connecting everybody. It just, it's a bit more complicated than that. I think it's more collapse of a traditional Western society, possibly. Well, it might not even be that. It might not be anything so dramatic, but I really suppose I have to wait and see. Okay, this is the Putin, Prime Minister of Russia. Combative Putin drops fresh hint over plans to stand for third term as president. See in the Independent article. Russia's Prime Minister Vladimir Putin yesterday delivered the strongest hint yet that he wants to stand for his old job as president in 2012. Mr. Putin has previously said that he had not reached a decision, but yesterday refused to rule out another term and drew comparisons between himself and Franklin D. Roosevelt, the only American president elected to serve for more than 2 terms in the White House. Asked if another term in the Kremlin would damage the Russian political system, he said, US President Roosevelt was voted in 4 times in a row because this did not contradict the American Constitution. Nevertheless, he stressed that he and the current president, Dmitry Medvedev, would concentrate on their respective jobs for now and do nothing that would violate the Russian constitution. Mr. Putin has said in a recent interview that both men would meet and discuss which of the two might stand for the presidency closer to the time. But yesterday he was more concerned to stress the legality of anything that would be decided. Mr. Putin was prevented from standing in 2008 because the Russian constitution stipulates that a president can serve only 2 consecutive terms, but he would be free to run in 2012. The 4-year term is being extended to 6 years, so whoever wins in 2012 has the possibility of serving until 2024. Mr. Putin, whose forces went to war with Georgia in 2008, also held out the possibility, if not of a rapprochement, but at least of a solution to the current standoff with Georgia over 2 breakaway regions, because Georgia was the dominant power in the region. But his most colourful remarks were about the leadership of his own country. How will we act in 2011 or at the start of 2012? I and President Medvedev have said this repeatedly. We will act based on the real situation in the country. on what we have done, on the mood in society, he said. In Russia, no one, including Medvedev, will do anything that would harm the constitution or the rule of law. Mr. Putin was speaking at his annual question and answer session with the Valdai Club of International Russian Specialists and Journalists over dinner at a luxury guest house in the Black Sea resort of Sochi. The Prime Minister, who is also talking overall responsibility for the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, uses every opportunity to promote the city. This was the third year that participants had been flown down to Sochi to meet him. Asked about Russia's tendency to concentrate power in one individual, Mr. Putin said, "That's why I made sure that all power was not concentrated in one individual." In other words, why the post of Prime Minister and President coexist. It wasn't in quotes. Presidential power is huge, and Medvedev exercises it properly and carefully, he said. Mr. Putin took enormous variety of questions about foreign and domestic policy and the state of Russia and its future prospects, to a question about whether Lenin's embalmed body might be moved from the mausoleum on Red Square in time for the centenary of the 1917 revolution. Mr. Putin flashback. There's a statue of Cromwell in London, isn't there? Who do you think was more Cromwell or Stalin? He added to his routine denials of any split or rivalry between himself and Mr. Medvedev, repeatedly complimenting Mr. Medvedev's performance as president, but he also spoke with obvious warmth about how they had known each other 20 years and took much the same political approach. He suggested that there was much more room for tension in the British coalition government, where the partners came from different parties. On Georgia, Mr. Putin was unusually restrained, never mentioning the exuberant Georgian leader Mikhail Saakashvili, whom he is known to detest by name, and stressing that talks should be held between the two enclaves of Abkhazia and South Ossetia and the Georgian government in Tbilisi. He made no claim that Russia should be a party to such talks. He said he would like the question of the legitimacy of the enclaves as independent states to be considered by the same international authorities who had pronounced positively on the independence of Kosovo. Mr. Putin also said that Russia has nothing to fear from China and that worries about millions of Chinese someday occupying vast swathes of Russian territory in the Far East are overblown. China and Russia say their trade and political relations are better than ever, though senior Russian officials are privately concerned about an increasingly assertive China along Moscow's vast and largely empty southeastern border. There is no threat on the side of China. We have been neighbours for hundreds of years. We know how to respect each other, Mr. Putin said. China does not have to populate the Far East to get what it needs, natural resources. We deliver oil and gas. There are huge coal reserves near the Chinese border. China does not want to aggravate the situation with us. No, it's strange. Yeah, okay. There's just a lot of headlines, but they're just like yesterday's headlines. Huh. No. Toy Story 3 overtakes Titanic. I was like, okay, well, that's it. Got that, the whole story there. I'll do it anyway. Toy Story 3 has become the UK's second highest grossing film of all time in its 7th week of release. The third instalment of the Disney Pixar franchise has now taken £70,131,106 at the box office, second only to James Cameron's Avatar. It overtook Mamma Mia, oh no, and Titanic's box office hauls of 69.2 million and 69.02 million respectively at the weekend. But it still has a long way to go before it catches up with Avatar, which has so far taken 93.4 million in the UK to date. The sci-fi blockbuster was re-released last month with an additional 9 minutes of footage. Toy Story 3 was also a smash hit in the US, where it scored the biggest ever opening for a Disney Pixar film, raking in £109 million. dollars rather, £71.1 million in its opening weekend. Pension rallies hit French cities. Hundreds of thousands of protesters have taken to the streets of France to register their anger over the government's austerity measures. The rallies came as a 24-hour national strike disrupted flights and rail services and closed schools. The activists are angry at government plans to overhaul pensions and raise the retirement age from 60 to 62. France's retirement age is lower than many countries in Europe, but analysts say the issue is polarising politics in the country. Labour Minister Eric Worth introduced a pensions bill to the National Assembly, warning of dire consequences if it did not pass. If we don't modify our pension plan, then tomorrow there will be no money left to pay the French pensions, he told parliamentarians. Commute to woe. Under current rules, both men and women in France can retire at 60, providing they have not paid social security contributions for 40.5 years, although they are not entitled to a full pension until they are 65. The government says it will save €70 billion, £58 billion, by raising the retirement age to 62 by 2018, the qualification to 41.5 years, and the pension age to 67. President Nicolas Sarkozy says reforms are needed to cope with an ageing population and the country's budget deficit. The government is also looking to find €100 billion of savings in 3 years and is planning cuts in the civil sector. Some secondary school teachers went on strike on Monday, protesting against plans to cut 7,000 jobs in education. State railway operator SNCF said fewer than half of its TGV high-speed services were running, and there was greatly reduced service on many other lines. Eurostar said its trains between France and London would operate normally. Some air traffic controllers walked out, forcing the cancellation or delay of about a quarter of flights from Paris airports. Air France said it was operating all of its long-haul flights as planned, but short and medium-haul flights had been affected. Migrant laws. Amid the disruption caused by strikes, the Interior Ministry said 1.1 million people had joined Tuesday's protests, making it a bigger protest than the previous one in June, where more than 800,000 people took part. Huge crowds braved stormy weather across southern parts of France, while demonstrators in Paris and the north enjoyed autumn sunshine. In Paris, protesters shouted through loud hailers, "Slave driving! No, no, no! Working more! No, no, no! Fair reforms! Yes, yes, yes!" I don't know. Was that in French? Didn't sound like it in French. They were chanting in English, you see, for the English listening people. It's very French of them. Not. Activists were also keen to make a wider point, angry at the recent deportation of 1,000 Roma gypsies, and a host of proposed laws which they say unfairly target immigrants and minorities. Pensions are a pretext for protesting against the Sarkozy system, said Adi Ahudian, almost a hoodlum, a Socialist Party activist. Amongst those concerns is a proposal banning the full face veil worn by Muslim women, which was passed by the lower house in July but is now up for debate in the Senate. Senators are also expected to debate a controversial new security law which would see recent immigrants stripped of French citizenship if they committed serious crimes such as killing a police officer. The law would also allow electronic tagging for foreign criminals facing deportation. Are you affected by the strikes? How serious are the disruptions in your area? Are you taking part in the protests? Send us your comments. It says in the end of the article. Don't normally read out those bits, but it's a BBC article. You'll be able to find it with the pensions rallies hit French cities. Huh. Just gonna see if I can get a whole load of tabs opening so I don't have to keep on rummaging around for more articles. No. Ugh. Stars turn out for Mercury Prize? Nah. That's more interesting. Strange one. Okay, I guess about ready, I think. Only got a few articles there. Most believe retirement as we know it is over. Nearly 3/4 of people believe retirement as we currently understand it will not be possible in the future. A BBC Newsnight poll has suggested some 70% of the 1,000 asked thought it would not be feasible for people to stop work then live on a pension for up to 30 years, the Comrades survey found. Some 72% of those in work were also worried about not having the funds to live as they would like in retirement. More than 3/4, 77%, thought younger people would get a worse deal. And more than half, 54%, thought it was unfair that younger generations would be worse off than those currently approaching retirement age. Pension changes. The poll of a cross-section of adults this month follows a number of changes to retirement announced by the previous and current governments against a backdrop of an ageing population and public spending cuts. The coalition government confirmed in July that it was planning to scrap the default UK retirement age from October 2011, which means employers would not be allowed to dismiss staff because they had reached the age of 65. Ministers hope the change will encourage people to work for longer, easing strain on public finances as most people continue to pay tax. The coalition also plans to raise the age at which people are eligible to draw on the state pension faster than the previous government planned to do. Labour had proposed to raise the state pension age to 66 in 2024, with the pension age eventually reaching 68 by 2046. But despite these changes, the Newsnight poll found half of those surveyed still said they expected to have retired by the age of 66, with 1 in 5 people saying they had already retired. Some 18% said they expected to have retired by the age of 75, while just 8% expected never to retire. Sense of entitlement. Jeremy Black, professor of history at the University of Exeter, said younger people who are yet to retire were having to adjust to a dramatic change in fortunes. The relationship between the generations has been transformed, whereas it used to be the case that up-and-coming generations tended to be more prosperous than their parents. Now we're going to be in reverse, he said. He added that the powerful sense of entitlement amongst those who had grown up with a strong welfare state had now become unaffordable. Thomas Vaughan, an assistant hotel manager in Dartmouth in Devon, said he was ready for a more difficult future. I'll keep working until I can't work anymore, because with the state of finances in this country, there's not going to be much of a pension going on unless I save myself, he said. More than 2/3, 69% of those asked in Newsnight's poll said that either they or their partner were primarily responsible for ensuring that they had enough money to see them through retirement. However, 1 in 5 believed the government was responsible. Although more than 3/4 thought younger people would get a worse deal, just 44% believed this would cause resentment or bad feeling between younger and older generations. Oh, this one's probably really boring. Really trivial. Beano Club closed new members. The long-running beat club for dedicated fans of Dennis the Menace. This probably won't make any sense to Americans. Anyway, you do get it, I suppose. You do get the Dennis the Menace things. To be replaced with a website in a bid to attract more members. The Beano Club stopped accepting new members in August, although the Comics Dundee publishers DC Thompson said it would honour existing subscriptions. I got bored of that one, actually. Really not very exciting. Suicides cost Japan economy $32 billion. The government in Japan says suicides and depression cost its economy almost 2.7 trillion yen. That's $32 billion or £21 billion last year. The figures refer to lost incomes and the cost of treatment. It is the first time Japan has released such figures. Japan has one of the world's highest suicide rates, with more than 32,000 people killing themselves last year. PM Naoto Kan says it's proof of an economic and emotional downturn. The government is setting up a task force to try to reduce the rate. From Friday, it will run a video clip of a footballer from the J-League on its website, urging people to be more aware of the problem. Lost income. Given that the number of suicides in Japan has been over 30,000 for 12 state years, this is a problem that needs to be addressed by the entire nation, a Health, Labour and Welfare Ministry official said. We hope this study triggers stronger prevention measures. Quote. The study showed that those who took their lives last year, 26,500 people in 2009, when they were aged 15 to 69, would have earned 1.9 trillion yen had they worked until retirement. Mr. Kan has pointed to the suicide numbers as proof of what he believes is wrong with the country, with too many people suffering economically and emotionally.
There are many causes of suicides. Decreasing them would be one way to build a society with a minimum level of unhappiness,
he said. But attitudes to depression in Japan arguably demand equally urgent scrutiny, correspondents say. In a country in which stoicism and consensus are highly valued, many older people in particular view mental illness as a stigma that can be overcome simply by trying harder, they say. The use of psychotherapy to treat depression has tagged behind North America and Europe, with Japanese doctors often viewing medication as the sole answer, they add. Petraeus, Koran Burning plan will endanger US troops. The top US commander in Afghanistan has warned that troops' lives will be in danger if an American church sticks to its plan to burn copies of the Koran. General David Petraeus said the action could cause problems, not just in Kabul, but everywhere in the world. Pastor Terry Jones of the Dove World Outreach Centre plans to put copies of the Holy Book in a bonfire to mark this week's anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. The White House and NATO have also expressed concern over the plan. White House spokesman Robert Gibbs said on Tuesday that any type of activity like that puts our troops in harm's way would be a concern to the administration. Earlier, the US Embassy in Kabul issued a statement condemning the plans by the non-denominational church in Gainesville, Florida. It could endanger troops and it could endanger the overall effort, General Petraeus said in a statement to US media. It is precisely the kind of action the Taliban uses and could cause significant problems. Not just here, but everywhere in the world. We are engaged with the Islamic community, added General Petraeus, who heads a 150,000-strong NATO force against the Taliban-led insurgency. Meanwhile, NATO chief Anders Fogh Rasmussen on Tuesday blasted the church's plans, telling reporters that burning Korans violated the NATO alliance's values. There is a risk that it may also have a negative impact on security for our troops, news agency AFP quoted him as saying. Mr. Jones said the church was very concerned after hearing General Petraeus' warning and was taking his words seriously. He said the church was praying on the matter, but he said the group had firmly made up our minds. How long do we back down? He said on CNN. Furious debate. Furious. News of the bonfire has sparked protests in Afghanistan and Indonesia. In Kabul on Monday, about 500 protesters chanted, "Long live Satan! Long live Islam!" and "Death to America! Woo! Yay!" as they set fire to an effigy of Mr. Alex Jones. It wasn't Alex Jones. It was Mr. Jones from earlier. The controversy comes at a time of already heated debate in the US over a proposal to build a mosque and an Islamic cultural centre 2 streets from Ground Zero, site of the 9/11 attacks in New York. The planned protest by Mr. Jones's previously little-known 50-member Florida church, 50 members, whose website labels Islam violent and oppressive, has prompted protests elsewhere too. Thousands of mostly Muslim demonstrators rallied around Indonesia last weekend. Claims that US soldiers have desecrated the Quran in both Afghanistan and Iraq have caused bloodshed in the past. There were deadly protests in Afghanistan in 2008 when it emerged that a US soldier deployed to Iraq riddled a copy of the Holy Book with bullets, and further lives in Afghan riots in 2005 when Newsweek magazine printed a story alleging that US interrogators at Guantanamo Bay had flushed a copy of the Quran down the toilet. The story later turned out to be false and was retracted by the magazine. Just flush it down the toilet anyway. It'd probably just block up the toilet anyway, that's all it's going to do. See if we've got anybody in the chat room. No, nothing much. Head teacher drops gay. Yes, he drops a gay on his head. From famous Kookaburra song. An Australian head teacher is under fire after removing the word gay from the famous song Kookaburra Sits in the Old Gum Tree. I think that's this song going on the radio at the moment. Gary Martin told pupils at Melbourne's Le Page Primary to substitute the word fun for gay in the chorus. Laugh, Kookaburra. Gay your life must be. Yes. If we sang gay your life must be, the kids would roll around the floor in fits of laughter, Mr. Martin told a local radio station. I wasn't trying to insult gay people. Oh, that's just, it's really rational. After a local newspaper reported this change to the Campfire Classic, Mr. Martin began receiving angry emails from readers and criticism from gay rights groups. The school principal admitted he had probably been hypersensitive, but said the word gay was commonly used as a playground insult. Good. And he was keen to minimise disruption in the classroom. 70 years ago, when the song was written, gay meant you are happy. Nowadays we know it's got all sorts of meanings, he said. I just suggested to kids, nowadays that can mean different things, so let's just sing fun. It wasn't any sort of school policy. It wasn't me being dictatorial or banning the word. All it was at the time was a behaviour management strategy to stop them giggling. In hindsight, he said he should have simply explained the meaning of gay as another word for happy, and told the children it should not be used disparagingly. But it's not true, is it? It means queer bummer. It rapes children. Yes, you should tell them that. Tell them that, and tell if they suspect their parents for being gay, to stab them multiple times. It doesn't matter, because they're gay. They'll laugh at anything you do to them. Yes, because gay means happy. There you go. Crusader Hillis of the gay and lesbian advocacy group, the Also Foundation, said the change of lyrics was an overreaction. It sends a signal to people that just because a word has two meanings, that one of those meanings is unacceptable, and that's really putting us backwards, Mr. Hillis said. Kookaburra, penned for a 1935 Girl Guides Jamboree, has been in the news this year after a judge found its tune was ripped off in Men at Work's Down Under, a global hit in 1981 and an unofficial Australian anthem. Yeah, because it's such an amazing song. Just finding more things to look at. False flag op. What? Where? Some bloody blog. Ugh. No, I don't know. I have to look at that in a second. It's got the headline, Natural Selection, give me Darwin over Dawkins any day. Charles Darwin never patronised his audience but presented his evidence modestly. Richard Dawkins, on the other hand, lacks the patience to let natural history speak for itself. Charles Darwin was not a clever man. Well, clearly he was a very clever man. Okay, but he was not self-consciously clever. He never talked down to his readers. His masterpiece, On the Origin of Species, is a modest book. It begins with evidence, and down-to-earth, homely evidence at that. Even though Darwin's encounter with the island species of the Galapagos and other exotic discoveries on his voyage with HMS Beagle was so important to his initial evolution that he starts his great work with observations about domestic British breeds. Similarly, in The Descent of Man, he offers copious anecdotes about his study of primates in London Zoo. He wasn't above teasing the animals, it says in brackets. Darwin is the finest trait of English empiricism. His modest presentation of evidence contrasts, I am sorry to say, with the rhetorical stridency of Richard Dawkins. Visit the famous atheist website and you will see how two causes are being pushed. Dawkins is campaigning with other secular stars against the Pope's visit to Britain. Meanwhile, he is touring the paperback of his book, The Greatest Show on Earth, The Evidence for Evolution. The trouble with this book is it lacks Darwin's empirical style, where the Victorian writer presented masses of evidence, and that his astonishing, earth-shattering theory emerged from common sense observations of nature. Dawkins lacks patience at this point in his career. Great, so we've got to put up another 50 years of it or something. To let natural history speak for itself, he has become the mirror image of the theological dogmatists he despises. He just cannot separate science from the debate he has got into with religious people. Debate is too kind a word. In a debate, you are trying to convince your opponents, but the new atheists have closed off the grey area for which in a long time in the West, science and religion coexisted. In The Greatest Show on Earth, Dawkins tries momentarily to backtrack, pointing out that all educated bishops believe in evolution, but he is soon back to the realm of dogma, asking himself why it took so long to come across the reality of evolution. This is clearly a hysterical question. Although it may not be a good historical question. Yeah, just repeated himself on that bit. Why did it take so long to discover the iPad? Well, first you had to invent the wheel. No sooner does he ask this question and Dawkins replies in effect that, and I am only slightly caricaturing, that it was because people were a bit thick. He offers no intellectual history of how Darwin's big idea was born from centuries of natural science, how the religious Victorians created an intellectual atmosphere in which such a leap in the dark could be contemplated. Nor does he offer what is surely needed, a blow introduction to evolution that starts calmly from the visible evidence all around us. In a telling aside, he is dismissive about the fossil Ida, which he cannot resist telling his readers was massively overhyped. Missing link, you would have to be an idiot to think that, he grumps. I'm not defending the publicity for this fossil, but it typifies the self-regard of the public atheist that when an accessible, immediate, exciting piece of visual evidence for the descent of man enters the mainstream, his reaction is to sneer. He doesn't actually want us to persuade. He just wants to be the cleverest kid in class, which Darwin never was. Ends Koran thing. Vicar tried to rape schoolgirl. A vicar tried to rape a schoolgirl in his church hall office and said she could not get pregnant. Oh, okay, he's saying about her, she could not get pregnant because he had the snip. A court heard today. The Reverend Malcolm Jackson, the 52-year-old vicar of Keeletham, Teesside, denies rape, attempted rape, sexual activity with a child, and causing or inciting a child to engage in sexual activity. Christine Egerton, prosecuting at Teesside Crown Court, said the girl struggled when Jackson tried to rape her in his office after pulling down her trousers. The barrister said she told him she could get pregnant. His response was he had, in his words, had the snip. She still struggled. Eventually he stopped. Miss Egerton explained how the abuse started. He would hug her inappropriately. He would try to kiss her, she said. He would ask her to see her underwear. He went on to sexually abuse her in a number of different ways. Jackson, a married father of 3 of Mersey Road Redcar, was accused of raping the schoolgirl on one occasion and abusing her on another. The girl did not tell anyone at the time, Miss Egerton said, but came forward 18 months later. She thought nobody would believe her because he was a vicar, the court heard. In a video interview conducted by police, the girl wept as she recounted her ordeal. She said after the church hall attack, "I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I kept thinking, you're supposed to be a vicar." After the loss of his alleged attacks, which happened over a period of months, Jackson blamed the girl, the court heard. She told police, he said, "You got me at a weak time. You have really hurt me. It's your fault." She told the detective conducting the video interview, "I didn't understand what you were saying. I couldn't say anything back." Bit confusing, that one. Never mind. A bit boring as well. The alarm clock is going off. Our globalisation in Canada. I'll have a look. I'm loading it up now. Oh, you've got a lovely tropical storm heading towards the Mexico-Texas coast. So that'll all the oil, if there's any oil there, it'll send it all flying everywhere. Tropical storm Hermine heads to Mexico-Texas coast. Tropical storm Hermine formed in the southwest Gulf of Mexico today and strengthened slightly as it moved towards the coast of northeast Mexico and southern Texas, the U.S. National Hurricane Center said. Tropical storm warnings were in effect from Tampico, Mexico, to the South Texas coast from the Rio Grande River to Baffin Bay, the Miami-based center said. On its current track, Hermine does not threaten the main concentration of U.S. oil and gas platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. Hermine, the 8th tropical storm of the 2010 Atlantic. Just trying something. 2010 Atlantic hurricane season was at 7 a.m. located around 185 miles southeast of Tampico, Mexico, and about 280 southeast of Brownsville, Texas. Its maximum sustained winds had increased to near 45 miles per hour, and tropical storm force winds extended upwards up to 105 miles to the east of its center. The center of Hermine is expected to approach the coast of northeastern Mexico or extreme southern Texas in the warning area early Tuesday morning, the Hurricane Center said. Some additional strengthening was forecast before Hermine made landfall early on Tuesday, and its inland band track would shift it out of the Gulf of Mexico into southern Texas. Hermine was expected to produce heavy rain over the northeast Mexico and South Texas border area, and this could cause life-threatening flash floods and landslides, especially over higher terrain in northeastern Mexico, the center said. In the Atlantic, the remnant low of Tropical Storm Gaston continued to move westwards and had a high chance of reforming as a tropical cyclone during the next 48 hours, the Hurricane Center said. At 8 a.m., it was located about 400 miles east of the northern Caribbean Leeward Islands. The Hurricane Center said heavy rains and gusty winds from this system should begin to affect portions of the Leeward Islands later today. U.S. forecasters say Gaston could threaten Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Jamaica, or the Turks and Caicos Islands in the coming days, depending on its track. But it's still too early to tell whether Gaston could eventually threaten the U.S. Gulf of Mexico, where major U.S. oil gas production and refining operations are located, or Florida. Apparently that's quite a normal thing as well, according to one of the comments. Wouldn't be surprised. Loads of them. Page just missing. Lots of links and stuff just missing pages. Huh. WH says oil gone, fisherman knows otherwise. That one's not working. Indonesian volcano blows again, because yet doesn't work. Okay, that was one of the ones I read from earlier. Not this one, but anyway, I'll read it. Al-Qaeda and Taliban threat is exaggerated, say security think tank. Strategy Institute challenges idea that troops are needed in Afghanistan to stop export of terrorism to West. The threat posed by Al-Qaeda and the Taliban is exaggerated, and the Western-led counter-insurgency campaign in Afghanistan risks becoming a long drawn-out disaster. One of the world's leading security think tanks warned today. According to the International Institute for Strategic Studies, the West's counter-insurgency strategy has ballooned out of proportion to the original aim of preventing Al-Qaeda from mounting terrorist attacks there, and must be replaced by a less ambitious but more sensible policy of containment and deterrence. Deterrence. The critique of the US and British-backed military policy contained in the latest strategic survey from the IISS. Just doing something. A respected but usually uncontroversial body, IISS officers made clear today that they have departed from their normal practice because of the serious threat to the West's security interests in pursuing the current Afghan strategy. In an effort to ignite a fresh debate and bring about a new approach towards Afghanistan, they challenge claims, not least from David Cameron, that the presence of thousands of British troops in Afghanistan is necessary to prevent Al-Qaeda from returning and thus increasing the threat to the UK. It is not clear why it should automatically obvious that in Afghanistan, freed of an international combat presence in the south, would be an automatic magnet for Al-Qaeda's concentrated reconstruction, the IISS Director General John Chipman said. Al-Qaeda is now engaged in Pakistan in very small numbers, not remotely comparable to the situation in Afghanistan pre-September 2001. Nigel Inkster, an IISS Director and former Deputy Chief of Britain's Secret Intelligence Service, said no such threat is likely to come from Al-Qaeda elsewhere, including Yemen and Somalia, he added. Anglican church clergywoman to greet Pope Benedict during visit to Britain. Meeting with Reverend Jane Hedges will see head of the Vatican shake hands with a clergywoman for the first time. Pope Benedict's arrival in Britain breaks new ground on many levels, with a state welcome from the Queen and the beatification of Cardinal Henry Newman. But buried in the itinerary is another, and some would say more piquant, landmark. Next Friday, the Pope will meet the Reverend Jane Hedges, Canon Steward of Westminster Abbey and a campaigner for women bishops in the Church of England. It will be the first time the head of the Vatican, which earlier this year declared female ordination a crime against the faith, shakes hands with a clergywoman. Their meeting will act as a reminder of the differences and difficulties between the Anglican Communion and the Roman Catholic Church. The Abbey team is aware of many historical aspects to the visit. We shall greet the Pope as our guest. We shall greet this Pope as our guest. Yes. There will be no hint of battle, wrote the Dean of Westminster, the Very Reverend Dr. John Hall, last week in the Tablet, a weekly Catholic newspaper. Does that mean that he's on the pill? An ecumenical evensong will begin with an exchange of peace between the Archbishop of Canterbury and Benedict XVI, and include a psalm, the Magnificat, readings and prayers. I have no doubt that it will be a memorable occasion, and yet it will not be coloured by any many emotions, Hall said. He wasn't quite sure if he was Jamaican or Italian. He's got a problem. He can't make his mind up. Sometimes he gets tan and he thinks he's Jamaican. It was almost a year ago that the Pope created the Ordinariat. I'm so ordinariat. A way for traditionalist Anglicans to convert to Catholicism. Ooh, like a paint job or something. Their desire prompted largely, but not solely, by the ordination of women. Oh no, which is often cited as the single biggest obstacle to reconciliation and unity between the two denominations. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, was informed of the initiative 2 weeks before its announcement. It looked at first as though battle lines were being drawn, to the embarrassment of all. Papal tanks to be deposited on the Lambeth Palace lawns, and groups of partially reordered Anglicans to be landed on Westminster Cathedral's forecourt, wrote Hall. Craziness. Are they talking about literal tanks? I don't know. However, within a month, amid speculation over William's leadership, the two met in Rome and proclaimed their desire for each other, to strengthen ecumenical relations. This depth of friendship and respect should not be underestimated, said Monsignor Andrew Fallet of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of England and Wales, who described the body language at that meeting as utterly disgusting, utterly cordial, and one of equality. There is serenity about the relationship. The Pope will be welcomed into the home of the Archbishop. It is a very reciprocal gesture of friendship and closeness. The tone of the meeting is a very mature one. On the subject of the Ordinariat, which will allow Anglicans to convert but retain aspects of their own heritage, he said, "It might have been more helpful had the Archbishop been kept informed. I do not think the Ordinariat is anything to do with the strength of our relationship." One senior Anglican also thinks the papal project will have little or no impact on the visit, calling it a red herring. The Right Reverend Tom Wright, the former Bishop of Durham, said, "People leave the Roman Catholic Church for Anglicanism, and the other way round. It has always been the case. It is the two-way traffic." It is easy to think ecumenical relations are what happens at a high level in public statements, but it's what happens on the ground that is important. He dismissed the Vatican's horror over women's ordination as surface noise. But it is difficult to see past robust views. At the 2008 Lambeth Conference, the once-a-decade meeting of the world's Anglican bishops, the Vatican contingent scolded them for failing to reach a consensus on the ordination of women and gays as bishops. Women and gays, women and gays, women and gays, women and gays. It's on the same sort of level with them. Liberal churches were suffering from spiritual Alzheimer's and ecclesiastical Parkinson's. Homosexuality was disordered behaviour that must have the clear condemnation of all, and unrest in the communion posed a further and grave challenge for full and visible unity. Probably that unity. The Roman Catholic Archbishop of Southwark, the Most Reverend Kevin MacDonald of McDonald's and Burger notoriety, he's always over there causing fights, spent 8 years, they're going to spend 8 years inside, at the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity. He said those involved in ecumenical dialogue had to consider where it was leading. It is a matter of trust and faith. The Church of England has been trying to find a way of accommodating people. They are running into a lot of trouble doing that. The Catholic Church does not want to tell the Church of England how to deal with this. There is no reason to think there is a pulling back on either side, but there has been a reality check. Anglicans and Roman Catholics were in a different place to where they were in the 1960s and 70s. What, they believe in the rotating earth now? People should not underestimate what we do have in common. Perhaps it is best to capitalize on that, not to make the best enemy of the good. Yeah, the tectonic plate theory has now been accepted by the Vatican. Hurrah! Previous meetings between popes and the archbishops have been heavy with symbolism. Pope Paul VI presenting Archbishop Michael Ramsey with his diamond and emerald episcopal ring in 1966. John Paul II walking with Robert Runcie in Canterbury Cathedral in 1982. The sites of Benedict XVI and Williams praying for unity at the shrine of Edward the Confessor could be a defining moment. The 11th century monarch is the patron saint to kings, difficult marriages, and separated spouses. Huh. I just get a bloody Putin article. I read it. Boring. Been there. Okay. Two more. Obama to back company tax breaks. President Barack Obama is to back new company tax breaks in a bid to regain the initiative as mid-term polls loom. He will lobby Congress, including a blocking minority of Republicans in the Senate, to let companies in the US write off investment costs until 2011. With unemployment stuck at 10% and the economy appearing to slow sharply, the President's Democratic Party could face big losses at the November elections. On Monday, Mr. Obama also called for $50 billion of new infrastructure spending. Officials said the President would announce the latest proposals during a speech in Cleveland later on Wednesday. Last week, the President used a speech on the economy to attack the Republicans' blockade for holding up a bill aimed at helping small businesses. The administration said that the new tax plan would save companies about $200 billion over 2 years. It would also provide an added incentive for businesses to increase investments. Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke noted in a recent speech the worrying failure of businesses to increase their fixed capital investment and the crucial role this will play in sustaining the economic recovery. Political games. On Friday, the US Labor Department announced that the US economy had lost a further 54,000 jobs, while the employment rate rose to 9.6% from 9.5% in July. Yet Republicans have set their theses against any further stimulus spending by the federal government, despite the slowing economy. Dumb Democrats accuse them of playing games with the economy in the belief that the president will be blamed by the public for the slowdown. However, many Republicans have said they favour tax cuts, including making all of former President George W. Bush's tax cuts permanent. The latest move may be an attempt by Mr. Obama to call the Republicans' bluff over tax cuts ahead of the congressional elections during November. Recent polls give the Republicans a significant lead over the Democrats. Politics versus markets. The White House is missing the big picture, said John Boehner. Boehner? Yes, John Boehner. See, he drinks from Boehner China. This cup's made of Boehner China. Boehner Fido. Leader of the Republican minority in the House of Representatives. None of its plans address the two big problems that are hurting our economy: excessive government spending and the uncertainty that their policies are creating for small businesses. It's a quote from him. But despite Republican fears about the size of the US government deficit, markets are still willing to lend to the US Treasury at unprecedentedly low interest rates. The 10-year US government bond currently trades at around 2.6% per annum. I think I read that article yesterday. So I think it's got a video for it as well. It was Barack Obama announces $50 billion infrastructure plan on the circly thing when it's loading up the video. And you could play it for a laugh in the background. Yeah, 1 minute 30. And it starts off with the actual video footage as well. Want to preload that? I mean, it might just be daft, but I just might as well put it on anyway. Break up the monotony a bit. Break up the monologue. Lennon killer is denied parole for the 6th time. The man who killed John Lennon has been denied parole and will remain in prison for at least 2 more years, New York state officials have said. Mark David Chapman, 55, was denied release for the 6th time following a video interview with a parole panel. Yes, he also applied to do the video for Mark David Chapman, I think, by minor self-indulgence, and he wasn't good enough. He didn't pass the audition. Chapman, who has a history of mental illness, pleaded guilty to shooting the former detail to death. Yes, to death. She shot him through his armour-plated back. On the street outside his New York City home in 1980. He is next eligible for a parole hearing in August 2012, officials said. In a written statement, yes, written with crayon, the parole board acknowledged his institutional record, but cited the disregard he showed for the norms of our society and the sanctity of human life by carefully planning Lennon's murder. Yeah, he had a gun and everything. Couldn't believe it. He was like, what? I saw him about and he shot him right in the face. This premeditated, senseless and selfish act of tragic consequence leads to the conclusion that your discretionary release remains inappropriate at this time and incompatible with the welfare of the community, the New York State Parole Board wrote. And he looks like Evstratios. It's him! It's his real dad! Oh no! We're not going to be safe! Mental people everywhere. It's attack with bone to China. I think I read an article about that one already. US Koran Burning plan condemned. Yes. Some really boring articles. Okay. It's probably the most exciting article all day. Congolese chimpanzees. Congolese. Yeah, okay. Condoleezza Rice. Congolese chimpanzees. Congolese rice chimpanzees face new wave of killing for bushmeat. Scientists say chimps face major and urgent threat as the bushmeat trade expands in countries north. They are some of the most mysterious apes on the planet, that according to local legend, kill lions, catch fish, and even howl at the moon. But according to an 18-month study of remote human settlements deep in the Congolese jungle, chimpanzees have been subject to a new wave of killing by bushmeat hunters. The scientists who carried out the study believe that the region in the North Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's really exciting month for news headlines when most of them coming from the Congo. Bongo, Congo. So nobody ever realised it was such a hub for news articles. It's home to at least 35,000 of the unusually large subspecies of chimpanzees, the Congolese rice breed. This is probably the largest population of chimps in Africa, but such is the hunger for chimp meat. But the researchers believe the animals are facing a major and urgent threat, and that northern DRC is now witnessing the beginning of a massive ape decline.
I was actually astonished to see the sheer quantities of bushmeat being taken out of the forest, said team member Dr. Cleve Hicks at the University of Amsterdam. It was really shocking. He estimates that roughly 440 animals in the region are being slaughtered each year. Because of the remote nature of the terrain and the ferocity of the DRC civil war,
It was only in the last decades that the apes were studied in detail by private researchers. Hicks documented a group of supersized chimps with a unique culture. Oh, that's probably humans, including a sighting of the apes feasting on a leopard carcass. Yeah, primitive man. Although it was unclear whether they had actually killed the animal. He said that the local belief was that the animals howled at the moon, but that has never been confirmed. The document that the threat posed by bushmeat traders. Hicks and his colleagues conducted regular surveys of bushmeat markets in local towns and on roads on either side of the Uele River in northern DRC. In total, they spent 1,365 days in 10 cities and towns and surveyed 13,140 kilometers of road. They recorded chimp carcasses and orphans for sale. The primatologist Dr. Jane Goodall has estimated that for every chimp orphan that is sold as a pet, 10 others from its family group will have been killed. In total, the team saw 44 orphan chimps and 35 carcasses, plus 9 leopard skins, 10 okapi, a type of antelope skins, parts of 14 elephants, bushmeat from 2 hippos, 169 monkey carcasses, and 69 monkey orphans. 2 of the orphan chimps had their top incisors knocked out or burned down with hot knives to prevent them from biting their handlers. The study is published in the peer-reviewed journal African Primates. Almost all of this trade with the researchers what does what mean? Almost all of this trade, which the researchers describe as larger than and more widespread than anticipated and expanding, is happening in the region south of the Uele River. Here, the human population is more dense than to the north because of illegal artisanal gold mining operations. Artisanal. Okay. There's a double entendre on that word. Artisan, I think, means like a crafting sort of thing, you know, like a just crafting, just like gathering materials for craft, like arts and craft. And artisanal, I suppose, just means referring to the artisanal practice, but it's sort of funny because it also says artisanal. Anal is art. Lost my place now. Also, local taboos about eating bushmeat have begun to break down in recent years. Hicks, who is also affiliated with the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, Germany, said that one tribe, the Barisi, used not to harm the animals because they believed their tribe was descended from a union between a man and a female chimp. Lovely. The women of 2 other of the tribes, it's like the man was Tarzan, obviously. The Azand and the Babenza previously refused to eat or cook ape meat for fear that it would result in them giving birth to babies with big ears. The spread of a Christian group called the Message Believers, whose doctrine is based on the teaching of an American faith healer and preacher called William Branham, who died in 1965, has swept away some of the old beliefs. Hicks said that followers interpret his teachings as condoning bushmeat hunting. A spokesperson for William Branham Ministries said that this was a misinterpretation of Branham's teachings. "I have no idea where they would be getting that," he said. "He didn't have any type of doctrine where you can eat whatever you want. William Branham was an avid outdoorsman. It was very important for him to follow all the laws of the land." Hicks said that many people do not know that it is against DRC law to hunt chimpanzees and that the law has not been enforced locally. It's not enforced locally. Some of the people who had orphan chimps even showed the researchers documents signed by local officials that purportedly gave them permission to keep the animals. "Once the population is fragmented, its decline is probably going to speed up rapidly," said Hicks. "What we are seeing probably is the beginning of that process. It is not too far gone yet to stop it. There are very few roads, so theoretically it would be that difficult to control. Alice Macaria, Commander Macaria of the Jane Goodall Institute in Arlington, Virginia, said, "The increasing level of the bushmeat trade in this region is truly alarming. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which has the largest population of chimpanzees in the world, the bushmeat trade, the illegal commercial hunting of chimpanzees, remains one of the greatest threats to their survival, along with loss of habitat due to deforestation. When roads are cleared to make way for mining, logging, and other concessions, hunters have greater access to these endangered animals." It's the end of that one. Well, at the end of the hour anyway. That's it. I can't find any more news anyway. Just been getting over the same pages. Falling asleep. Neat. Okay, well that's me done anyway. I can't think of anything else to add really. Guess we're just gonna have to put on some music or something. I got one whole article, but I got a drink and stuff, and I'm gonna read that out and probably save it for tomorrow. Okay, that's it for now. Bye.